All right, welcome in, everyone. It is time for Full Court Press. It's also $5 Tuesday at WagerTalk, which means myself, Rob Vino, every other handicapper on the site will have plays today on their page for just $5. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out Robin and my pages for joint specials from now through the end of the NCAA tournament. You've got 3-day specials in the full season, and we have a monster board today, Rob. So real quick recap of last night. I have to point this out. I have come on here numerous times and said, Rob, I made a good bet that lost. What does that mean? Well, I was right on my intel was correct. I beat a line move and it just didn't work out. That would typically is, you can make good bets that lose. And so I got to at least acknowledge last night, I feel like I made a bad bet that won. I was on Cleveland State. I thought Nessa was going to play. He did not play. They actually showed up without 2 starters. And so the number moved against me. But sure enough, what did Cleveland State do? They came out, dropped 100, I think more than 100, and won the game. So, hey, I kind of would rather be on the bad bet that wins, Rob. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah, let's take the bad bet that wins every day of the week, Adam. That's definitely, there's the old saying, rather be lucky than good. And in instances we're unlucky in this business, when you do it every single day of the year or of the season, you're going to run into spots like that, and we'll take them. I mean, sometimes you have the wrong calculation, but it works out right in the final result. For myself last night, Parlay Wrecker with Eastern Washington, 85-81 loss. And I tell you, I don't know if anyone, and in fact, if Garth, who was on the Eastern Washington side with me, if you watched that second half of that game, but that was as gut-wrenching and as frustrating as it could get, watching Idaho just get second chance after second chance after second chance and hit just about every 3 they threw up in the second half. But despite all that, Eastern Washington comes back and takes the lead 63-62, comes down the next possession, commits a foul. Idaho misses the front end. What happens? Offensive rebound, kick out 3, miss the 3. What happens? Offensive rebound, kick out for 3, make the 3, 65-62. And that's kind of how the entire second half went as Eastern Washington tried to claw back. You get out.
And Rob, real quick, you would be, that was an even better bet when Idaho showed up with no Colton Mitchell last night. So, you second leading scorer for Idaho doesn't play. You had to feel like you were in a good spot there. It just didn't work out.
Yeah, 2 games in a row. Northern Colorado, I had their team total against Idaho, lost by a half because of no Colton Mitchell. And then again, no Colton Mitchell. We'll see. He'll probably return for the Big Sky tournament, I would think. Biko Johnson's a nice backup, obviously senior, and did a nice job. But 25 second chance points, you just can't give them up, and you can't get beaten 42-18 from the 3-point arc. Stuff I didn't handicap, I have to admit. I didn't see any of that coming here. But watching Eastern Washington try to defensive rebound last night, you'd have thought the opponent was Michigan State, Arizona, Duke, Michigan, somebody that just are monsters on the boards. And Idaho's not monsters on the boards, but they were last night.
Yeah, this is like specifically in those Big Sky games, and it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on for today. A lot of those Big Sky teams, I felt like, just sort of showed up to play last night, went through the motions for 40. They know that most of those teams were locked in to like their general seed, and it looks like they're all ready for the Big Sky tournament. The reason I bring that up is we're going to see a lot of teams playing tonight, teams from the Colonial, the America East, like teams that are already, the tournament field is essentially set, and now they're playing their final regular season game. So it's something that I'm sure we'll bring up on the show. Shane Russell says UCLA plays well at home. Let's go there first, Rob. I said, we got to pick one of these. For me, I'll harp on it. The feature game for me is always going to be an NCAA conference tournament game over a regular season finale. But we have to, we still have to do a show for the folks that pay us. And I know that they would love a feature game from a power conference, specifically one that maybe they can clip So I'm going to be a good company guy today, Rob. I picked the latest big game on the board for the feature game. And I'll start with the point Shane is making here, because I think that's ultimately the handicap. UCLA does play well at home. And I think we're starting to see, you've had Mick Cronin complain a little bit. I just paused there for a second because you could fill in the blank about just about anything. But he did complain about, having to travel early in the conference season. Well, I would say, Mick, you know what? It does work in your favor also, right? Because I think we're starting to see, Rob, teams struggling a little bit to go out to the West Coast, especially as it gets later in the season. And now you have a West Coast trip. So, like, if you were to tell me, hey, I love the spot for UCLA because it's probably a tough spot for Nevada, I think I would agree with you there. If you were to tell me Nevada might do what Minnesota just did to UCLA over the weekend, space the floor and just torch them and go in there and win, I'd agree with that too. Nebraska's a top 10 team. If they can get over kind of having to go out to the West Coast, I don't see why they would not have success here. So how are you seeing this one, Rob? Do you want the spot with UCLA, or do you want what I consider to be the better team with Nebraska?
Yeah, ultimately that is it, right, Adam? UCLA 7-0 straight up at home against Big Ten competition. Haven't lost on this floor yet as far as just straight up goes. And today, actually, you're only asking them to win straight up. I mean, -1.5. We've seen a line switch here. Some pick'ems still out there. Ones, shop the best you can. But essentially, you're asking UCLA to win the game, and you can money line those 1.5s down if you really wanted to. But you counter that by saying Nebraska's been great on the road. 6-2 against the spread on the Big Ten road. I mean, nothing has fazed these guys. And it's not like they've walked into horrendous arenas every time they've been on the road. I mean, cover at Michigan as a huge dog, win straight up in places like Indiana and Ohio State. So they've been very good on the road themselves. I think fundamentally, when you try to handicap this one out, Nebraska does have some edges. And it's interesting, the last game that they played, you talked about Nebraska beating USC the other day. And obviously, USC is going through some turmoil here. Chad Baker-Mazara kicked off the team. So that win, I think they took advantage of a team that was just in disarray. Eric Musselman's got a lot of work to do there. Here, they're not necessarily facing a team in disarray. You just hit on it a little bit. I talked about it the other day, how the team has responded to Mick Cronin, and then they go out and lose on the road at Minnesota. So UCLA is a funny team. Home-road dichotomy is a real thing. But Nebraska unfazed by this stuff. Nebraska, the better shooting team. Stuff that Nebraska doesn't do well offensively, Adam, UCLA doesn't necessarily do well defensively, which kind of negates itself. So you can't take advantage of the fact that Nebraska doesn't get to the free throw line a lot. You can't take advantage of the fact that Nebraska doesn't offensive rebound really well, because UCLA doesn't do those on the defensive side very good either. What you wind up with is basically a debate. I think you ended it pretty well. The fundamental over the situational, or the situational over the fundamental. Both teams can climb standings here. Nebraska's in a position where they can be a 2 seed if they can. They're tied with 4 losses with Michigan State, 14-4 each. UCLA has the ability to climb the standings. They're only a game behind Purdue and Wisconsin. These teams both have 2 to play. So the intention, the focus, everything will be there. This is a difficult game. I will say one last thing, is that we talk an awful lot about Rink Mast, the pivot man for Nebraska, who stretches the floor from 3-point range. UCLA does have a guy in Tyler Bilodeau that is athletic enough to go out and cover him around the arc. So that advantage that usually helps Nebraska a little bit might not be such an advantage here tonight. And to counter that, Mast is going to have to guard Bilodeau. And Bilodeau is extremely athletic around the perimeter too. So that matchup there, which generally swings in Nebraska's favor, doesn't really swing in their favor tonight. I'd probably look at this game staying under the total. What I'm afraid of with that statement is game extension at the end. Close game, score foul, score foul, score foul, and before you know it, you're at 144 and you lose the bet. So nothing firm here on either side. I would say you have to make that decision which side of the fence you want to stand on. And for me, yeah, I'd rather firmly stand on one side of the fence in other games than this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in terms of, we know Nebraska, they are going to have some variance in their games, right? Like the 3-point shooting for Nebraska can really swing a game one way or the other. I was just kind of going to I just want to go to my numbers here and see here's the thing for me. I'm pretty much right in line, side and total. I think you can make a very strong case for both sides. And I'm kind of looking in the chat, and I think the chat is like sort of playing this out the way I would have expected this conversation to play out. There is very strong points to be made for Nebraska, and there's very strong points to be made for UCLA. If you're just trying to take the better basketball team here, I think you would take Nebraska. They have I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Bayou. I was scrolling the chat. I'm like trying to watch the chat, look into the camera, look at the odd screen. So I miss who sends some things sometimes. But whoever made the point of Nebraska's loss, like look at Nebraska's losses at Michigan, and they were down 2 starters, and they nearly won that game. They lost by 3. That's actually a win for Nebraska. They were a 10-point underdog. They were missing 2 starters. They led for the majority of that game. They lost by 3 to Michigan. Very, very impressive. A home game against Illinois, which was a huge revenge spot for Illinois. If you remember, Nebraska went to Illinois earlier this year and won at the buzzer. So big revenge spot. Illinois gets the win in that game. Again, that's another top 10 team. They lost to Purdue at home by 3 in what was a very, very competitive game. And if I remember, kind of a desperate spot for Purdue. I feel like Purdue really needed a result in that game. And they got the result at Nebraska by 3. And then finally, the road loss to Iowa, where Nebraska kind of played one of their worst games of the season. Only scored 52 points. It was a 52-57 final. Just a really off night for Nebraska. Now, Nebraska has Iowa coming up at home this weekend. So if you want to make the case that Nebraska is looking ahead to that Iowa rematch because Nebraska, Iowa, I am certain that Nebraska cares more about Iowa, like the program. I would think the Iowa game is a bigger game than like UCLA, who they're probably still trying to figure out why they have to play UCLA or why they're in their league. Like I could buy into that as well. But man, Rob, if Nebraska comes in here and plays their game tonight, they're probably going to win. And that's why it's really tough for me to bet. I don't like to just bet a spot without having a lot to back it up. And I feel that that's what I'd be doing with UCLA here. So it's a pass for me. Probably shouldn't have picked this as the feature game, because now if they watch this back, they're going to be like, we can't clip that. How are we supposed to clip that right there? But I mean, we're here to talk basketball. And I did think that was an intriguing discussion. So we'll move it along. I'm sure we'll go with, there's going to be another big game that comes up. I'm sure they can find something better to clip from the show. But again, it's supposed to, this show is also supposed to illustrate, maybe that's not, we have this huge slate of games tonight. Maybe Nebraska UCLA isn't the one to target. Maybe the one to target is the one Garth wants to look at out in the Atlantic 10 tonight. So Garth says he's looking at the A10, Dayton, Richmond under 146.5. I'm glad you brought this game up, Garth, because this Richmond team, ever since I saw them play a couple weeks ago, is one that I have a fairly strong opinion on. And Rob, what I've noticed about Richmond is they are going to chuck threes. And if they go in, they're going to have a chance to win. And if they don't go in, they're going to lose. It is really that simple. They take a lot of outside shots. And my concern with Richmond, Rob, is they don't make up for it in other places. So it's like they truly are a team that is going to live and die by the perimeter shot. Now, I have noticed that they are scrappy, and I like how they play from behind. Couple times this year, Richmond has dug themselves into a big hole, and I thought they did a really impressive job to get back in the game. The game I was at against VCU, they were down 20. came back to within 2. The following game, I believe I had them as a 5% play. They were down 15, came back and easily covered the 5.5. So how can you take that and make a case for the over? And then I guess I'll give my final thoughts on the side. I mean, I'm sorry, the under. Garth wants specifically says under, but make a case for the total either way.
Yeah, and I think Garth is probably on the right side here because of the number where it is. It's in the higher half of the 140s. In the lower half of the 140s, I might not agree as much as I would with 146 and that. But let me just start with why I agree. It's because Anthony Grant's team seems to have gotten back to what Dayton basketball has been under him and what his entire coaching career has really been, which is very pedestrian-like pace led by your defense. So he slows the game, Adam. He cuts possessions in 2 different ways. They're playing better defense. And it's not remarkable defense. When you go through the game logs, it's not like they're holding teams to 30% shooting or less, but it's good enough to where when you play the methodical style, you can cut teams' opportunities to score. Last 6 games, on this 5-game winning streak that they're on, last 5 results, Davidson, 59 points. You can justify that. You could say to me, all right, Rob, Davidson's not a good offensive team. Okay. George Mason, 67 points. George Mason's not a great offensive team. Okay. St. Louis, 62 points. Don't come at me from either angle there. St. Louis is a fast-paced team, an extreme tempo team that scores in bunches. 62 points. Little revenge in that game. And then GW, 66 points. These teams are all equivalent, if not better, than Richmond is offensively. So you would have to believe that the Richmond side here, even at home, is destined for a result somewhere between 64 and 68, the way Dayton's playing. And Dayton, offensively, they've been really good as of late, but you give yourself a lot of room there. I mean, you could win a game 77-68, stay under, 78-68, and stay under. So just from the sheer mathematics of it, Adam, I like the fact that this total is priced, like I say, in the upper half of the 140s. I think it's a severe difference between being like 143.5, 144.5, 146.5 makes that difference. So I'd be with Garth in this instance, and we'll see. I mean, this is the kind of game where if Dayton's going to falter at some point off of this 5-game hot streak, it could be here on the road at Richmond. But if they win again, VCU's on deck for them, and we could see Dayton being a major player inside this conference tournament. They can, I'm just looking at their standings now. They can secure themselves a top 4 spot in the A10 tournament with a win here, which is big for Dayton. Richmond, for what it's worth, trying to fight their way out of the bottom, but it's not really, other than it being Richmond's final home game, right?
Everyone makes it in this league, Rob. Everyone goes in this league.
And their ambition would be the senior night, the final home game is the point I was trying to make here. So I think you've got different motivations here, both motivated, but I think Dayton probably a little more as they try to lock in a top 4 spot.
Yeah, I think it'd be Dayton or under for me. I'll just wrap it up by saying, so you've got Richmond might have some depth issues again. Jaden Daughtry did not play against Loyola Chicago, and Jonathan Beagle has not played in a couple of games. And they did Richmond. I watched a good amount of that Richmond Loyola Chicago game on Saturday. Richmond just listen, like they're not. I mean, I don't think they rely on either of those players particularly, but I do think depth matters a little bit for Richmond. Obviously, so the way they're set up, you're gonna have like AJ Lopez barely lead, they try to, he's there's 3 guys that they play like starters. Okay. It's Lopez, Arga Bright, and Will Johnston kind of get like what you would consider quote unquote starters minutes. Everyone else kind of plays like 15 to 20 minutes per game. So they do. So Mooney does have a pretty deep rotation, and you start to take 2 guys out of the rotation when you like, if you're playing Rob, if you're going to play 9, 10 guys, but you sort of take like what you would consider guy like 4 or 5 and 5 or 6 out of that rotation, I think you get something like you saw over the weekend against Loyola Chicago. It was a team that scored in the mid 60s, was never the right side in that game. Loyola Chicago was always the right side in that game. And how poor has Loyola Chicago been this year? Like, historically bad, A10 team relative to what they were supposed to be coming into the year. So I can see where you're going with the undergarth, and I think you make a good point. Dayton has totally turned their season around, and now like you can almost think, it's almost like they smell blood in the water a little bit, knowing they can get into that top 4. And just look at the defensive efforts from Dayton the last couple games to beat like some of the teams they beat along the way. St. Louis played really good defense in that game. I'm going off memory. I should have had this pulled up. I want to say George Mason might have been one of them. I know the Davidson game where I laid 5 as a client play with Dayton. They really locked in defensively. Davidson couldn't really do much, scored 59 points. Yeah, so here you go. This is all in the last 2 weeks. 59 Davidson, 67 George Mason, 66 Duquesne, 62 St. Louis. That St. Louis team that dropped the game I went to up at Chaffetz Arena. I think St. Louis dropped 100 plus. I know we were celebrating 100 being on the scoreboard, everyone in the arena. And then the most recent game, holding George Washington, Rafael Castro back to 66. So this Dayton team has figured it out, and where they figured it out is the defensive end. You make a great point about pace, Rob. When they're at their best, they're kind of, slowing it down. They're not letting teams run on them. So yeah, Garth, your under makes a lot of sense. And I kind of feel like if Dayton shows up here, they're going to cover. This number is smaller than, like, Richmond took some money here. That I don't understand. I thought this would have gone the other way. So if you're looking at a 4.5, I think Dayton might be something I may circle back and consider when we get off the show here. All right. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a good time to promo. There's so many games today. I've got one locked in already. I'm probably going to give it out here on the show because I have a feeling I'll have quite a few plays on this board. And I've just been, we're at the point in the year, late in the year, where I'm going to take my time on some injury stuff and just making sure that we're not going to have a team show up and sit 3 guys. Probably what you and Ski do all season long in the NBA. Just try to figure out who the hell is playing, Rob. Because that's what I think you might see. I think you might see some load management this week in college basketball. So it's something to keep an eye on. Where I was going with that, though, was you'll get all our plays on the 3-day double the firepower package, or I believe we have, at least for one more day, the March Madness package. Do you remember what they said about that? I probably should have read our email.
Yeah, I think it was extended out. It had expired, but then got extended. So you're still able to go ahead and purchase both of our plays in a combo package, much like the double the CBB Firepower 3-day package. You could just have that right through the national championship game. And now, and those of you who have been watching the show since November, all these little conference tournaments, you're probably not going to get better info on these games than what you're getting here, Adam, especially with mid to low majors on top of personnel as well as anybody. So we're going to have plays, guys. We like this stuff, and you're probably going to get an exorbitant amount of plays. I will say this for myself, just speaking for myself, been in the plus column for the entire season, but have not played anything with a rating above 3% at WagerTalk all season long. And I can honestly say that 3% probably is on one hand. I could count them. But now that we're into the conference tournament and the major tournament stuff, we'll be upgrading a lot of these plays. You'll see more 4% stuff out of me. So a good time to get on board right through the end of March Madness. Adam, the only thing I don't recall is what they're charging for a price for the two of us, what the combo pack is priced at. I want to say $199, but don't hold me to that. I'm not positive. I'd have to go back and check the board here to see exactly where the Detroit office has that package price. But nonetheless, it's the busiest time of year. It's March Madness. You're going to get a ton of action from the two of us. And last thing I'll say is that I'll preface this package by saying I like it a lot, and I would like it as a consumer simply because Adam comes from a side perspective and I come from a totals perspective, and you get a huge mix of both with the two of us. So whatever you like, you'll find it here. Double the CBB Firepower, 3-day or full season.
Yeah, I think I can count on one hand how many times we've been on this either like the same game, same side. I don't know if we've ever been head to head, but I do know like I know San Diego State was like one of the only ones I can think of where we both had it, and thankfully it won. So no complaints there. All right, I want to go to Mad Max here because this might exemplify load management as good as any game on the board tonight. Your boy was in the building on Saturday, Rob, at the O-Dome, the O'Connell Center, the Exact Tech Arena for Florida just absolutely dismantling Arkansas. That was, listen, I've been around this year. I've seen a lot of the top 25 in person. That was as impressive of a performance that I've seen all season. Any team, I've seen Duke play twice in person, seen Arkansas play twice, Michigan State, Kansas, a lot of the top teams. And Florida, what they did to Arkansas on Saturday was as impressive as it gets. I stayed after the game for the net cutting ceremony. So because Alabama, I think it was the Alabama result, them beating Tennessee on Saturday, it created the outright conference win. So Florida, basically, they announced it before the game, which I was a little nervous of. I was like, not that I rode, CT loved Florida, so obviously I was there. I laid the 9.5 with him just for some action while I was there. And I was like, they literally made an announcement before the game. Like, if Florida wins, they win the SEC. Everyone goes nuts. Then they said to hang around after the game. I'm like, oh, I was like, did they just indirectly tell you that they're going to celebrate the SEC win before the game? Rob, by 15 minutes into that game, the celebration, they had shirts. I don't know how they did. Someone needs to explain to me how they already had the stuff. They had the shirts, the hats ready to go. They must have been generic. I didn't get a good look at them. It must have just said like SEC champions. But the point is, they celebrated that win. They cut the nets down. Todd Golden addressed the crowd. He's there with the shirt on, the backwards hat, thanking the fans. They now come in tonight as a 23. They're a 1,000,000-point favorite against Mississippi State. I would be shocked if like half of their starters don't get the night off. I already think Thomas Ho might either not play or barely play. There's some guys that are probably going to rest here. And if they're not going to rest, like you're likely going to see Golden like play everyone. Like that would I'd be really surprised if this is like, especially if like let's say they get up 15 or 20. The crowd went insane. The people that were still there, which was most of them, when they brought in the 7'9" guy at the end of the game against Arkansas. I forget his name. He's literally 8 feet tall, can barely move, but he's on the Florida bench. Point I'm trying to make here is Mad Max says he really likes Florida. I don't know that this is a Duke scenario like last night with NC State. I think this could be like because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I think Florida heads to Kentucky this weekend. So to me, like this will be a celebration of basketball for Florida where the entire team plays, especially the seniors. The student manager who doesn't even have a uniform might end up in this game for Florida. And then they will take the Kentucky game this weekend serious because that's just, I think that would be in the name of like staying sharp. I don't know. I just like under those circumstances, I just don't think I could lay 23. But the question is, do you have the guts to take Mississippi State? It feels a lot like Troy, Louisiana Monroe from the other day, which Monroe ended up cashing as a big dog. So what do you do with this game here for Mad Max?
Yeah, it's hard just from that situational aspect. Mississippi State has shown you the last 2 games they're more than capable of being beaten by this number. Just in a great spot. I would say great because I don't know that Mississippi State ever has a great spot, but in a favorable spot against Missouri, the other day, they lose by 24. And prior to that, they lost by 25. So you've got 2 consecutive games where they've lost by 23 plus, which is what you need tonight to go ahead and get a point spread covered. 91 plus out of Florida, I think could be somewhat in danger because of exactly what you said. You would expect everybody to play here. It's Florida's final home game. They've already done the work necessary to obtain the number 1 seed in the conference tournament. This is, you call it let down, call it sandwich, call it whatever you want. It's one of those spots where you just don't know that Florida is going to have maximum focus in this game. Where Mississippi State will come to play, they're not very good, but they're going to play the entire time. And Josh Hubbard is still capable of leading the team to a point spread cover. The 91.5, I do think just comes into issue because of the fact that you're probably not going to see a host of starters on the floor for Florida the last 5 minutes of this game, 4 minutes of this game. And when you're looking for buckets and you're trusting the deep reserves, the low-end reserves to get you those buckets, it's tough. So I think this is probably one of those spots where you can qualify it as a situational letdown off the high from Saturday, off the energetic performance of Saturday. That same energy probably not applied here by Florida. Who knows? They can roll the balls out and win this basketball game. So to me, for anybody who does watch the NBA show with myself and Ski Prophet, we had the same instance last night on an NBA level with Houston and the Washington Wizards. It just was, it was Houston concluding a road trip with a couple days of rest after that, and then a big game on Thursday night. And you saw it play out. Double-digit favorite wins by 5. Kind of the same thing here. Double-digit favorite that's not going to win by 5. They could probably win by 14, 15. 22.5 is a lot to ask in this particular situation as far as I'm concerned. And again, it correlates. To get 92 is a lot to ask in this situation. You might be better off. Was it Max who asked that question? I would say this. You might be better off isolating your bet to a first half bet, knowing that you'll probably get the Florida starters in full force for the first half. And if they don't come out half asleep or not caring, then you'll get exactly what you're asking for here, probably Florida points. I'm trying to look real fast before I turn it over to you, Adam, what the first half team total is here for Florida. And I'm showing 44.5. So it's been bet down from 45.5 to 44.5. But I think, Max, my inclination would be try something first half rather than full game.
Jacob Hepner says Mississippi State is the play. I agree. If I was here, I'm trying to like manually tweak my number with like who I think is going to be out and like how much it matters and who I think, even though if they're not out, they may play sparingly. I'm coming up with 18.5 as what the number should be for this game. So again, as you know, Rob, I always say this, the higher you get away from pick, right? The less, like a 4-point difference in my number. If it's like the spread is 1 and I'm at 5, that's a big deal to me. Once you get up in the 20s, it's not as big of a deal, but that is where I'm at, like 18.5 on Florida, all things considered. So there's some 23s out there right now. Like that's not a bad bet. Listen, you could be, it's one of those ones where you could look really stupid when it's all said and done. I think back to my Notre Dame bet from a couple weeks ago against Duke, but I'll say this again. I don't think this is the same scenario. I really do think Florida, this might be a televised practice, Rob. And then the game that they actually care a little bit about is this weekend in Lexington. So I will, Jacob and I are right in line. He goes, I wish I could show you all the papers I write down, all my predicted spreads. I have Florida minus 18.5. Well, we're right in line with that. That is, I'm right on 18.5 with you. And it would be Mississippi State or pass. All right, Bino, I'm going to take the floor here. I'm going to give out my parlay leg and this is going to be a client play for me. And oh yeah, there it is. So All right. So I wish I did this 10 minutes ago, but what I thought was going to happen happened. And here's what we're going to do. For the parlays, because we have a little ground to make up. We are going to go 3-teamers the rest of the way because I think I want to get a full payoff on our parlay. It's going to be me, it's going to be you, and it's going to be someone that I think made a really smart point in the chat. Okay, that's going to be our 3-team parlay. I have not decided yet. It might be Jake. It might be Jacob because our numbers land the same on Mississippi State. I haven't decided how much I want to piss you guys off yet. So we'll revisit that because 22.5 Mississippi State might be in there. Bayou might take this over and be like, no, I'm giving the third leg out, which is fine because I still owe him one. But the point is, we're going 3-teamers the rest of the way. I'm going to give out a 4%er right now. I played New Jersey Institute of Technology plus 5.5. Now, the reason I wish that I said I gave it out a few minutes ago is UMBC got bet further. I thought I was getting the best of the numbers. So UMBC got bet up and it actually went to 6.5. And I said, man, I hope that's a head fake. And sure enough, it was because it's back down to 5.5 or 5. I played it at 5.5. That 6.5 was clearly someone manipulating the extra board at 9:45, 9:50 a.m. That was quickly gone. So Colin Gregory says NJIT plus 5.5 for the parlay. No, take the 5.5. I'm not giving out the money line. We are going to take the 5.5 here because I do think that spread is important. And so I want to set this game up because, Rob, this is the mindset that you need to go into tonight for a lot of these games. Like this handicap can be applied to a lot of these games. Okay. UMBC has won their league. They've already won the 1 seed. Okay. They've wrapped up the outright America East title for this year, and they wrapped up the number 1 seed in their conference tournament. We talked about it on Saturday. I gave out UMBC on Saturday on the show with Kelly. They won by $1 million. They wrapped up the league. Okay. Now they have to go on the road to the I think it's the Joel and Diane Bloom Wellness and Event Center. I'm going off the top of my head. They call it the WEC. Great building. I put up my walk through that building. I can't believe how big it is. Can't believe how nice it is. I'm over here watching ESPN Plus thinking NJIT plays in some little gym. No, Rob, this thing was built only maybe 7 years ago. It was awesome. They are going to host. So here's the situation with NJIT, which I think is just as important as UMBC not having much to play for here. There is a scenario where they get the 2 seed, which of course in the America East, that matters because this tournament goes highest seed host, reseed at the end of each round. So remember, America East, higher seed host, reseed at the end of each round. So every seed is very, very important because that 2, not only is that 2 the potentially hosting a semifinal, but it could mean you host the final or not. So again, they would need Vermont to lose, but still, it's possible. What I think is more important here for NJIT, Rob, is just playing a good game. Because this team, I was at the Vermont game. I thought they played good enough to win. They didn't get a single call down the stretch. Vermont ends up winning by 6. It was a game that NJIT was competitive in throughout. And the last couple, over the weekend, they got crushed by Bryant. I just think that, I feel like they got a little bit tired. They went on the road. I believe that was a road game. My point is this. NJIT, just for the vibes, needs to play good tonight, right? I really think you'll love this. Their head coach is a former Seton Hall legend, Grant Billmeyer. Big dude. I think he was on the Shaheen Holloway Seton Hall teams back in the day. He's 6'11", and the guy goes absolutely nuts on the sideline. It's just funny watching tall dudes get pissed off and freak out. It's just a little bit different. The point is this. NJIT, in my opinion, needs some good mojo going into the conference tournament. This is the best season they've ever had. They are at worst here, the 3 seed. Someone says, does Rob talk? Hold on a second. This is my parlay leg. So I will let him speak in a second. They're at worst the 3 seed. They could be as high as the 2. I think they need to play well just to have some positive momentum going into the conference tournament. So New Jersey Institute of Technology plus 5.5 is my leg of the parlay. David Silva, yes, I'm giving Rob the floor in the second. Rob, either do you want to, if you have anything to add to this game, great. If not, and you want to go into your parlay leg, we can do that too. It's up to you.
Well, I don't want to take away from anything. I couldn't get any more in depth about NJIT other than just to fortify the fact that you made that there are games that are going to be played this week, including tonight, where there is an importance level to one side and zero importance level to the other side. And unless it's a rivalry game, which like last night's Eastern Washington, Idaho game, it didn't matter in the standings or the seedings for those two Big Sky teams, but it is a rivalry game. That's a little different. Then you'll get full focus. That's what you got last night, 81-77 final. But in games where there's no rivalry to be had and one team cares and the other team doesn't about their position in the upcoming conference tournament, then, you know, the situational plays are there. Here you're getting a home underdog. So I'm all for everything that Adam just said. We could move on, though, and I don't know necessarily for a parlay leg. Just pick somebody out of the chat. You know what?
Yeah,
let me go. I'll go.
Yeah, you need to go because they don't want to hear me talk right now. I just went way too long on NJIT, so we need to do your parlay leg. Yeah,
guys, listen, they're not going to get any NJIT and UMBC inside talk on any other show. So obviously, you can take that as a added bonus here. I've got so many games on this card that I like tonight, and they'll all be up. You know, I'll probably have 4 on board. My $5 Tuesday play is already up for those who are interested. It's already up. But I'm going to go against my grain, and just to show that I am not an absolute homer in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to go play Oklahoma tonight against Missouri. Oklahoma in this instance is a 1-point favorite. No, they're not. They're 1.5, 2. Best you can get, guys, is 1.5. Mostly 2s out there. Let me go ahead and check money line on this. Approximately 35 cents. I would just assume lay the 2. Listen, this is as big a revenge game as there is on the board tonight. And Oklahoma is the team at home seeking the revenge. Missouri beat Oklahoma in overtime a little while back when, out of desperation, Mark Mitchell, who is not known for three-point shooting, power forward for Missouri, raced down the floor, down 2, heaved up a 3 at the buzzer. It went in. Mizzou wins 88-87. Oklahoma, in typical fashion this season, ends up on the short end of a game where they played hard and just did not come out with the win. They have blown countless amount of games in the second half this year. Games where Oklahoma's been competitive with this entire SEC and just didn't come up with the victory. But recently they've started to get a couple of these wins. And I think their mindset tonight is going to be to avenge what happened in Columbia, Missouri. Like I said, about a month, maybe 5 weeks ago. They certainly showed that day that they've got the talent to play with Mizzou. Mizzou comes off a 24-point pounding of Mississippi State the other day. And I think what Missouri has done overall now to this point is enough on the resume to get them in. I think Mizzou was kind of pushing to get into the tournament. I think they're safely in now. I don't check these bracketologists rankings every single day, but those of you who do, you'll probably find Missouri settled in the tournament by now. Got enough quality wins. The road win, even though it was against Mississippi State, probably helps a little bit because it was on the SEC road. But here, you know, one thing I've noticed as of late, Adam, is Nigel Pack's beginning to play the way we would expect him to play. Nigel Pack was off for a majority of the season as far as shooting is gone, but there's been a couple of instances here recently where Nigel Pack in the guard play for Oklahoma has been outstanding. Again, it's more situational spot, but the fundamentals come into it because having watched that game in Mizzou the first time around, you could see Oklahoma has every ingredient to beat Missouri and probably should have won that day. So I'm going to play the revenge angle here with Oklahoma, the short-priced home favorite, to atone for what happened. I don't foresee Mark Mitchell throwing in another 3 at the buzzer to defeat this team. I think Oklahoma right now is trying to make some strides heading into conference tournament action. There was a point in the season, Adam, and I think that I probably was not alone on this bandwagon, where I felt like, what, OU has suffered so many heartbreaking losses that they're just going to surrender. But give them credit. This team has not surrendered at all and still continue to play hard. So for me, one more time, the parlay leg is going to be Oklahoma minus the 2, because that's the prevalent number here. Again, if you shop well, you can find 1.5s. But I like Porter Moser's bunch here to come up and win this game.
You could, for the parlay sake, go Oklahoma money line if you wanted to. That way it would just take out, because you have 1.5, you have 2s, and then I feel like in case it goes to 2.5 or 3 later in the day, do you want to just say Oklahoma money line?
I looked it up too and think I saw 130s across the board mostly. So
that's
130 is probably a great. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that? Money line play. OU Sooners. Get in the Sooner schooner and let's ride off to victory here.
Someone just said, does Adam talk? I'll tell you what. You know what? We usually get to 6 games on the show in depth, but because Rob did such a good job of breaking that one down, and I have nothing to add there, I'm going to not talk about that game because I feel like I would just be rehashing what he just said, and we're going to get you an extra game today. So, Rob, I am going to – let me go to the starred chat, make sure I've got – okay, yeah, we'll do this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to a conference tournament game because we need some conference tournament talk on this show. And then we're going to finish up with the game Mad Max has recommended for us. So I want to talk about the Patriot League tournament, which starts tonight. And the reason I want to discuss this game, Rob, is you said a couple weeks ago that we were probably getting a rematch of Army Bucknell when they played at 11 a.m. We both agreed that the over was probably the right side. I remember Colin Gregory really liked Bucknell in that game. They won as a 3.5-point underdog. And you were correct. We have the rematch tonight in the Patriot League first round. That means the 4 worst teams in the Patriot League will play tonight. It is in this matchup specifically is going to be Bucknell hosting Army. The reason I want to bring this game up is because I'm looking at the total starting to drop. And that makes absolutely no sense to me. Because Bucknell is going to play zone against a team that only shoots 3. They did it remember I texted you, I think I was driving somewhere, and I was like, that over seemed easy, and I pulled up the box score, and I was like, Army shot 45 threes in that game. And I went back and looked, and basically Bucknell just let him shoot a 3, which is kind of an issue because all Army wants to do is shoot 3s. So it's almost like you're letting them do what they want to do. But at the same time, they couldn't defend Bucknell at all. What changes here, Rob? Why would we not see the same game we saw a couple weeks ago?
That's a $1 million question. I don't know, because it's a conference tournament game and because it's single elimination and because perhaps, those who have pushed this game down figure that. And again, we talked about conference tournament handicapping yesterday. It does get a little more defensive because everybody knows that once you lose this, your season's done. But to your point, Army shot 45 threes in that game and 19 twos. 45 threes, 19 twos. That's crazy. But the first game they shot 31 threes. It's what you're going to get out of Army. And just to fortify a little bit here, the first game went overtime, but it was 160 at the end of regulation. 160. It was 80-80. And then you had 148 in the rematch. Everybody knew what the other team could do. You've got game film of the other team and you still make it to 148. So it's hard, Adam, unless you have just miserable 3-point shooting here to understand why you would push this total down into a range. Now, I just talked earlier about how the upper half of the 140s, to me at least, is different than the lower half of the 140s. You've come from 146 down to 143.5 at this point, which makes this kind of playable at the 143.5 range. Money in on Army in this instance, which makes it even more head scratching. Why would you be betting Army and under? If you're betting Army, you think they're going to make threes. So yeah, I'd agree with you here. The line move is kind of weird. And why would you expect anything other than another game that can make it to 144 now is all you're asking for at this point is 144. So I would definitely subscribe to that play.
I think Bucknell is getting bet right now, which I agree with. If I had to bet a side in this one, it would be Bucknell for the reason I would make that play. Well, they're at home, they're hosting this game, so that certainly helps. But two, they get the easier points, right? So it's like they're going to be able to get to the rim on Army and score at the rim because they have a couple of bigs. Remember, maybe a month ago I said, well, this is Bucknell. This team has. Last year they had Noah Williamson, who was as good of a rim defender as you're going to find in this league, and as good of a post player as you're going to find in the Patriot League. And they really don't have that this year. But they've over the course of the season, Bucknell's had some reasonably good post play emerge for this level. Remember, in the context of the Patriot League, which is what happens in this league sometimes, because a lot of these teams go out and play non-conference games against opponents that are always better than them. So sometimes it takes you until mid to late February to see a team has guys that are good against Patriot League opposition. Amon Dories is that guy. He's not Noah Williamson, but he's 6'11", right? Like he's still a 6'11" guy that has shown the ability to score at the rim, 16.1 points per game. So the way I look at this game, Rob, I think Bucknell's going to get easier points and they're at home. I actually am a little bit off. I think I'm closer to 5. So there's still 2.5s out there, although I don't think they're going to be there very long. I think you're going to have to lay 3, but it's one that I'm definitely considering. As far as the total is concerned, there is a scenario where Army just bombs 3s and hits them, which probably puts this over. So we're still looking for a third leg of the parlay. I mean, we could go. If I don't know how much you like this over, but it's an option. You don't have to decide right now. I want to talk about one more game before we decide on that, because I think you're going to have an opinion here. I have an opinion here. And like half of the chat is asking about this specific game, which also happens to be what Mad Max donated about. So this seems like the logical place to finish up the show. Alabama, Georgia tonight. Mad Max is leaning over 179.5. I texted CT like an hour ago, and I was like, probably a casual 200 in this game tonight. I was joking, obviously, but a couple weeks ago, Rob, we were laughing at how high the Alabama-Arkansas total was, and it went over with literal no issue. I think there was, what were we? Was it the mid 180s or something crazy like that?
Against Arkansas, yeah.
Listen, Georgia's got guards that are going to be able to score here. And if you subscribe to the theory that Alabama just put a lot of effort into that comeback win over Tennessee, and they don't come out like balls to the wall defensively here, I'm inclined to agree with Max that this one's probably going to go over. What do you think? Alabama, Georgia, do you have a side opinion in this one as well?
Well, 2 things here. A, I did cash a ticket on Georgia team total over against South Carolina the other day. They put up 87, but bigger than that is the last 4 games since Jeremiah Wilkinson returned to the lineup for Georgia, they have reverted back to basically what they were early on this season, where they just score. Like there was a lull in Georgia for a while without Wilkinson, but since Wilkinson's returned, the last 4 games, they've absolutely been on fire. 86, 91, 80, and 87. Alabama, ever since Charles Bediako was finally ruled ineligible to play for Alabama anymore, it just seems to me that they took their return natural Nate Oates form back and started scoring. Now, Saturday, because I'm such a bounce back player, the game against Tennessee is not like any Alabama game. When you play a game that low scoring, Alabama doesn't score. They hold their opponents down. I always look for the bounce back, and Alabama has an opponent here, much different than Tennessee, an opponent that will run with them. So I looked at this immediately. I'm not going to disagree with over 179.5 because, like you, Adam, after seeing that Arkansas game, it looks like the same exact game. especially with Wilkinson back for Georgia. And they probably, I wouldn't even say probably, they are less of a defensive team than Arkansas is, Georgia. So Alabama could be to 100 plus on their own. Georgia could get to 90 plus, their side. So I would totally agree with over 179.5 here.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't see Georgia just getting like stop after stop against Alabama. I don't think, like, let's put it this way. If I wasn't so concerned that Bama was a little bit gassed from playing, from finishing the Tennessee game the way they finished it, I'd be like probably beyond I'd just be laying the money line with Bama. It was like Bama -1. Like I actually make them more like -5. But the reason I haven't bet it yet is my concern that this might be a spot where they allow some points to Georgia and suddenly we're in a game like a Bama Arkansas that's a game. And then of course you're factoring Georgia at home, the game probably meaning more to Georgia having the home fans. And it's like, then you're starting to be like, okay, do I want to play into that spot? But like for me, it's pretty strong leans here to Bama and the over. And I guess I'll throw it to you. So we have 3 options for the so I actually want to address this first. I got to address this first. Chris Mulhern. Listen, this is not like a negative thing, but I want to make sure that like if you're new to the show, like people know what they're getting with this show. He says the show is can't miss value plays. Where are the plays? Okay. Here's the thing. This show, like, where are the plays? I'm just going to promote, like, we work for WagerTalk. We sell our picks. Okay. So like we come on here an hour every single day, give in-depth information about 6 or 7 games. Today we did 7. I've already given out a pick I could sell on the website. So New Jersey Institute of Technology plus 5.5. That's a 4%. Any other day, it's a $25 pick on the site. Today we would sell it for 5 because it's Tuesday. Rob gave out Oklahoma as a pick. I don't know if that's a client play or him or not, but he gave that as a pick. We're going to find a third one we agree on in a second. And then we gave opinions in the other one. I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. If you just want the picks, head on over to WagerTalk. We have a great special up that gets you all of the picks. That is the way to get the picks. There is never a scenario where I'm coming on the show and Rob is coming on the show and we're just rattling off 15 to 20 opinions because we sell like otherwise Rob and I don't eat. So it's like, it's never going to happen. So if you're looking for the picks, wagertalk.com, there's specials on both of our page. That's how you get the picks. If you're looking for an hour of in-depth discussion on 6 or 7 games, you're in the right spot. And look at that. You do get picks because I've already given out a play that I'm betting. That's a play for my clients. Rob gave us Oklahoma. I didn't catch if that was a client play or not. And now we're gonna figure out a third one here, Rob. So I've got 3 options. Okay. We're either going to ride with Jake on Mississippi State or we're going to do one of these totals. I'm going to let you give your input on which one of those options you like best because I'm kind of like, I'm on the fence. I think all 3 are good options.
Yeah, I would say if I were to list them in pecking order, and we're talking about very slim variance between these 3, Adam. I was just going to make the point about Army and Bucknell, where Ryan Curry and Jackson Bell, 2 guys who shoot a lot of threes for Army, were 3 of 20 last game. 3 of 20, those 2 guys. And that game still got to 148. Good reason to play that thing over 143.5. But if I have my way in this, my say would probably be the safest bet is the Alabama-Georgia game over 179.5. I think that's the safest. I probably like Mississippi State plus the best, but I don't feel it's the safest because you have the ability to get absolutely destroyed if things don't go your way. And I would prefer some first half stuff. So I'll my 2 cents is Alabama, Georgia over 179.5.
I was going to say you basically you did not help at all right there. You basically said all 3 are good. They're all pretty much even. Yeah, let's do that. Colin says not going to overthink it. I'm taking a 2 unit on Bama and a 2 unit on Bama team total over. Colin, if you like the Bama team total over, I kind of think Georgia's team total over gets there as well. That's kind of what's keeping me off Bama. So let's do that. Let's go Bama, Georgia. What do we say? Over 179.5?
Thank you, Colin.
Is that what?
Yeah, 179.5. Unless it's moved since we've been talking. Let me see. But it's 179.5.
All right, let's do that. That's the 3-teamer for today. I think that's I like that a lot. My gut tells me that we're going to be laughing about how many points there are in this Alabama Georgia game, similar to the Arkansas game. And if it's close, I mean, it's a 1-point spread. You've always got the chance that it goes OT, just like that Arkansas Bama game did.
Yep.
Even though they never needed overtime for that was over easily. So we have hit the hour mark. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And I'm not trying to be like, I'm just trying to say, like, clearly, like, we can't, there's reasons we can't just rattle off 20 opinions, because then no one would buy our picks. So at any rate, the 3-teamer for today, which I feel good about this one, Rob. I've got a client play, a 4% play, a New Jersey Institute of Technology, the Highlanders plus 5.5 at the WEC tonight in Newark, New Jersey. Rob, you're going to go with Oklahoma money line. And then it seems like we all agree that there's going to be points galore in Alabama, Georgia. So we are going to go Alabama, Georgia over 179.5. Oklahoma money line, NJIT plus 5.5. That's our 3-teamer today. Let's run it up this month. We will be back tomorrow morning for more full court press, 10 a.m. Eastern. Sorry. 10 a.m. Eastern right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. $5 Tuesday. Check out all the handicappers. $5 picks, and we will see you guys tomorrow.